Hey everybody, it's Tuesday.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And thanks for being here with us tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So, we always start out with kind of our local fishing report here. And, fishing was actually really interesting this weekend because we have been sitting around and waiting for colder water temp or colder weather for colder water temps. And let us tell you that we sure got that. But the fish were not necessarily responding, in that typical fall pattern. And honestly, I think one of the things about that is after such a long, warm summer, that fish were just kind of responding to this like a cold front. So I think a lot of people got out there and got excited and saw water temps, and then weren't necessarily exactly as psyched with how fishing went. But with that, I think, targeting the fish in the right way was a huge key. And one of the things that we did is just kind of slowed down the presentation. So bobbers were a big key for us for panfish this weekend. And actually, it's a great weekend to be doing that because with these fall conditions and all the leaves scattering across the water, fish are less timid or less afraid of those bobbers floating by. So really, it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean we both got a little overexcited and we may have been a little underdressed on Saturday. But we also forgot that it was 65-degree water temps, 4 days prior to that, and then we were looking at 54-degree water temps. And when a degree temp change in water is like 10 degrees to a fish, that's a tank in temperature. So they were being a little finicky. For those of you that watch us, you know a little bit about our neighbor Bill. We saw him out on the water, and he kicked our butts with minnows and stuff. And him and his brother were definitely fishing a lot slower than we were.
Yeah.
But we caught on to it and put a few nice crappies in the boat.
Well, and I'm interested in how your fishing is going because
Yeah.
I'm hearing Tobin here. He's saying fish are on the chew. Hey, that's great. And it doesn't take that long for fish to kind of like normalize out
Paul,
with
how are
those
ya?
temperatures.
Ray, how are you?
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to this weekend coming up and seeing how that's going. So,
Brian.
yeah, let us know where you guys are at, what your water temperatures are at. What was our water temp?
Well, the day one was like that 56 degrees, and then the next day with lows in the 40s, it was still going down into 54. I think we said 54 and a half on our YouTube report. So,
well, and that is a good point. We do put out a fishing report each week. So if you guys are looking for that, go and check it out.
Yep.
I'm Brian Claremont, Fisher on the Chew. Fish, you always find biting fish, so that's not fair to say.
Brian's fish are always hungry up by him, so that's not even fair.
Oh gosh.
Well, he is magic too.
Yeah, that is for sure. So, as we go through the evening, keep letting us know how your fishing is going.
Yeah.
Or feel free to chime in with any questions or comments as we kind of chat along with our show. So, let's bring in our guest here, Steve. Thanks for being on.
Hey, Steve.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Awesome. Excited to be here with you tonight.
Yeah, it took long enough to line this up, eh?
Well, there's so many great things happening, in the end of the summer and this beginning of the fall, and like, God forbid everyone's working, and so combine all those things, and it was pretty all right.
Yeah, with hunting season right around the corner and ice season not that far away, I mean, it's flat out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of before we dive in, for somebody who maybe doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Steve Davis. I'm originally from Newfoundland. Moved out west a few years back, and I'm just another average guy who loves the outdoors and anything to do with fishing or hunting. But I got to be honest, probably my favorite season of all is ice season, I would think. It's just I do way more ice fishing than I do open water, and I'm a part owner in a lodge up north in northern Alberta, and it's we do our fair amount of fishing. Don't get me wrong, in open water, but the ice season is by far that's my jam. That's my favorite thing.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of people here that definitely are agreeing with you. And this is a time of the season to get excited because, it's the time of the season to be preparing for it. So, I mean, is that
Mhm.
something that you find yourself doing now?
Yeah, like it's just recently here. I've gone through some of my stuff. I mean, there's only another what is this, the 18th or 19th? 19th.
Yeah.
So it's only another 6 weeks, and the tracks will be going on this thing here, and I got to get it down. I think we're going to wrap it again. I'm not really sure, but instead of the red, we're going to go green this year. I think with the striker in the back, and get the tracks on it and get everything set up. Like go through my tents, and I get a wood stove for one of my tents, and I got to go through my fish finder and my rods, my tackles. So I mean, it's an endless game, right? Like it never stops.
Okay, so out of all of those awesome things that you pointed out, I'm going to pick out probably one that people are not expecting. You said that you have a wood stove for your tent. So that's something that I'm starting to see become a thing. And to be honest, that's something that we are quite a bit interested in. But
Mhm.
not everybody has heard about that yet. So tell us kind of what you are doing with your setup there.
So I have two tents. I have both are auto resorts. The XT Pro Lodge X over. So it's the flip over. That one I run a diesel heater in. I actually have a through hull exhaust mounted, put right through my tub, so it doesn't melt the tub. It's the same exhaust basically they use for jet boats. I run the diesel heater off my generator, and I have the exhaust coming right out through the back. Like when I was fishing last year at Cold Lake, it was down for that tournament they had on in February, and it was cold. It was minus. It probably hit minus 40 there a couple days in a row, and came over, and the diesel heater is on.
Whoa.
I think we cut out there for a second.
Yeah, just a sec.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happened because we were having a really great connection before that. But we did hear the beginning of that. So you were saying that you were connected through your tub, and then I'm not sure if I heard after that.
Okay, so yeah, I have a through hull exhaust in my tub in my auto resort. So I have a through hull exhaust, and that's the same exhaust they use for the jet boats and stuff for the heaters. So anyway, I run the diesel heater off my generator, and it was like minus 40 down on Cold Lake in that derby. And a buddy of mine, Ryan Juno, comes over from the next tent and sticks his head inside the tent. He's like, "Wow, it's like minus 40 outside, and it's plus 20 in my tent. I'm sat there in a t-shirt and my bibs, just having a tea and drinking, or having a tea and fishing." So it was like they're really good. And when it comes to the wood stove, I have another auto resort, a pop up, and I got a wooden floor made for that. And yeah, you put that wooden floor down, put the wood stove on top of it, and spark her up. I got a hole. I had to cut a hole in the top of the tent, was the only thing. And I got the silicone insert industrially sewn into the top of the tent. And that way the pipe just goes on up through like a normal wood stove would in an outfitter's tent or whatever. And yeah, I mean, it can be minus 45 to 50 with the wind blowing, and you're sat in there in your shorts and your t-shirt fishing in minus 40. So I mean, it'll always be plus 20 to 25 in the tent, right?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, and the wood lasts fairly long. Those otter tents are insulated so well, and they hold heat really good. So it's really nice, especially in our conditions.
That is really a super cool thing. That gets me excited for ice because one of the things that we are going to be doing this year is camping out on the ice. So is that something that you're setting up for the day, or you're staying out there for an extended period of time?
So I won't set up the wood stove on. I mean, the only way I'm setting it up if we're there for a week, right? Like this year, we got a few trips planned that are probably going to be 2 weeks long to 3 weeks long on the ice. It's a long ways to get there. You're looking at your 4.5 hour truck ride, and then you're looking at probably a 5 to 6 hour ride in the side by side.
Wow.
So by the time you get everything down there, get set up, you go get your wood, and you're there for a week, 2, maybe 3. If it's up to me, I'll be staying for 18 or 19 days for sure.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about how you go about packing and traveling such a long distance. Because one of the things I find is once I have my fishing gear all packed in, and then I have personal gear packed in, and I have my dog packed in, it's like there's barely room for Josh, you know? So, I mean, how do you go about getting all of your stuff where you want it to be?
It just comes from a good buddy of mine that I'm in that fishing lodge with, Ken Ball. Ken Ball always makes a great big list of stuff of what he does. That's basically what I do when I get ready to go. But now I've done so many of these trips, it kind of just, you just know right off the top of your head. You always got to plan for the next day, right? Like, and I refer to some guys that do guiding up in, like, I've been watching the Yukon, like for their moose hunts and stuff. You always got to plan for that next day or that week for what you're going to need. Marley, stop. But I'm
He's
lucky.
getting excited for ice too.
Yeah, she probably is. I'm lucky because I got a lot of room. I got that 6-seater side by side. I got that box. I got a big enclosure that basically goes right to the roof, and it goes right around the box. And it takes a lot of planning. I mean, you got to take your food for however many days you want to go for. You got to make sure there's a supply of wood around, which there is where we go, so it's kind of easy. You got to make sure you got your communications. Like, I won't go anywhere up there because where I go, there's absolutely no service at all. So if I get in a sticky situation, I got to be able to contact somebody to come and get me. And I mean, no doubt I have a few friends in a close by community, but I still got to have something that allows me to communicate with those guys. Like, I have an InReach GPS, so I can text anybody from anywhere in this world. So I ran into a couple of situations before where I did get in trouble on my birthday. I mean, it was -50. We were at ice fishing. Quad broke down, and I almost froze to death on the ice. If it wasn't for a local cabin being by, I probably wouldn't be here to talk about it today. I mean, it was cold. There's no service, right? So you really got to be prepared, writing stuff down. You gotta know exactly what you need. When it comes to food and stuff, not a big deal because I mean you can catch your food every day, right? And for me, it's easy because I mean I'll take a couple of roasted moose, or I'll take, you know, I'm very easy when it comes to the food side of it. Obviously, I'm not 260 pounds for nothing. So I'll eat pretty much whatever, right? But it is a lot of prep going into it. You got to know how much fuel you're going to need, like different rods and stuff, and different bait, and, tackle, I should say, because there's some lakes you're not allowed to use bait up here, and there's some you are. But where we're going to, Lake Athabasca, it's not. You can use bait there, and I think it's 3 lake trout. There is no size limit on them. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's not. We don't actually keep any of the fish anyways. Like, we keep a couple, but any of the bigger ones that we catch, we always throw them back because we're really big on the conservation side too, right? But prep, huge. Takes almost a full day.
Well,
Yeah, actually, that's really awesome because Josh makes fun of me when it takes me that long to pack. But when you're prepared and you have all the things you need, then you're happy then.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling when you get up to where you're going, and it's in total. I mean, you're looking at probably a 10 to 12-hour travel, and then all of a sudden you get there and you go to haul out a bunch of steaks. As we cooked steaks in the wood stove last year, we had a grate, and it just clamps together, and you put your steaks in between it. You hold it right in the wood stove, and it's like a charbroiled steak. But it wouldn't be good to get up there and you go to haul steaks for supper, and there's no steaks. But yeah, it's good to double check everything. Like I said, it takes pretty much a full day, probably day and a half, just to make sure you got everything for a trip like that.
Absolutely. One of the other things that you mentioned kind of a ways back, but I think a lot of people can relate to is the floor in your shack. So I think that you said that you had maybe like a wood floor, or was that just for your stove, or do you use a floor?
So the floor is actually built out of styrofoam and OSB. So it's all glued together. You get the shape you guys know what the auto resorts are like for the pop-ups. Mm-hmm. So you just measure out your floor, cut your boards into pieces that are actually going to fit down inside of your sled or in the back of your side-by-side, and you just lay them all out. It's super easy. The only finicky thing is if a buddy of mine got a big trap door, or I shouldn't say trap door, but he got a live well cut in his. So he has to drill a hole that's like oh my God, must be, I believe it's 4 feet long by 2 feet wide. So he starts obviously do it with his auger, and then he gets out his big ice saw and just starts going to town. But it gets a little finicky when you start putting parts in your tent like that, because then you got to make sure they're strong enough for you to tread on, or if you're putting a cot down or a chair to sit on, right? You don't want to go through and go down into a big lake full of cold water. So, and that's like for the stove, you got to have my buddy built it's basically like a big steel pan that you put on top of the wood, and it's risen up probably, I don't know, probably 4 inches off the floor, so that it doesn't create too much heat down bottom, but it creates enough where it's not going to have, like after 3 or 4 days on the ice, or you're probably going to have a bit of water starting to form underneath your boards and stuff, but it's not to the point where you got to pack everything up and move.
Mm-hmm.
But super easy to make, but a lot of stuff too. It's a lot of loose ends to tie up.
Yeah. Well, and I'm kind of in the minority when I say this, but shout out to having your heat like turned down to the point that your shack does not turn into a lake. I don't know. It is just nice to be able to camp on a spot for a few days, and when things get too slushy, that gets honestly, it makes the whole rest of everything really hard. You have a cot that you're trying to sleep in and it sinks in, all these different things that you don't expect. And so I honestly prefer the heat to not be so hot in there.
Yeah, like I'm like a furnace anyways. I generate a lot of heat, so for me it's, if I can get it like 15 to 18 degrees or not even that, like I'm okay, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't need to be to the point where you got to strip down and you're, you know what I mean, you're sweating bullets or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really nice, especially like when we were on the ice last year. One of the nights we were there, I think it was like minus 42 or 43, and the wind was just whistling, right? Like, so it's nice to have that heat there when you need it.
Yeah, that's absolutely for sure. So when you are out there targeting Lakers, the other thing I have to ask is what kind of setup are you using? Because that's got to be a pretty tough rod and reel. But I'm also interested in your tackles. I know that's kind of a loaded question, but can you highlight some of that?
So I have a bunch of, I shouldn't say a bunch. Well, yeah, probably 8 or 10 rods, but the two that I use the most are actually made by a company out of BC called Valley Custom Rods. They do great work, and 2 of my rods are they're medium. Actually, 3 of them, 2 medium heavy and 1 heavy. And there's a video I posted on Facebook here a few weeks back. You need big gear. Like when you're up there, the largest lake trout in the world was caught in Lake Athabasca. So you don't know what you're going to hook into. Now, that trout wasn't caught on a rod, it was caught in a net. But who's to say that you're not going to hook into something that's 60, 70 pounds? I mean, the chances are there. The lake is 325 kilometers long. It's 100 kilometers wide at its widest point, I believe, or it's either a little bit more or a little bit less, but the chances are there to hook into a giant, right? Tackle, I always run 25 to 40 pound mono. I don't use the braided stuff, not really for ice fishing. It's nice, I guess, if you're for deep water or whatever, just because the mono stretches so much, right? But yeah, the braided stuff is good for different depths, I guess, or whatever. But when it comes to the jig side of it, I use a lot of jigs. A couple of friends of mine own a company here in Alberta called Big Sky Flies and Jigs. I don't know if you guys ever heard of them or not.
Yep.
Yeah, actually.
So it's really good friends of mine. I hunt with those guys every year. They come out, we go to the lodge, and but yeah, Dan Davies and Alicia, I think they're partnered up with TC Moto, so they make a bunch of tubes that we had a lot of success on. Different colors for different lakes. When we were up there last year, we had a ton of fun on a couple of their TC Moto tubes, and when we were leaving, one was called I think it was called a watermelon or something like that, but it was completely torn in pieces. Like you couldn't even tell what it was. And then they had another one called a walleye wasabi, and that was the same thing. I mean, these lake trout just tore that up like it was, and you could watch them. So I got a live scope, so you can watch them swimming in from like 60 and 80 feet away, to hammer this tube, and it's just amazing to see. Like, and you can throw different jigs down. You can throw, because Dan and them make their own lake trout jigs as well, 2 ounce or 1 ounce, and but you can throw other stuff down there like Savage Gear, or not to get into name and stuff, but I mean, they were very specific on what they wanted. And you can throw stuff down on the bottom, and they're like cats, right? Lakers are like cats; they love to chase. So you bang it on the bottom 2 or 3 times, and they'll make a quick dart at it, and they'll go away. But if you put other stuff down there, like that walleye wasabi, or it's one of their pole dancers, you can tell real fast the change in the attitude of the fish and how they react to what you're doing. And you could be doing the same movements, the same everything. Just change that tube, and it could be the world of difference between you catching a 40-pound fish to you not catching anything. So the tackle is a huge part of it, and also the bare mesh pressure side is too, right? Like, Lakers don't like when the bare mesh pressure is all over the place. Lakers don't like that. When it's nice and stable, you'll have a field day. You'll have so much fun. It's not even. I can talk about it till I'm blue in the face, but until you actually witness it, it's unbelievable.
That is really exciting to hear about. And, I've heard that they can be very finicky. To hear the connection with, the different pressures and the weather systems going through. I mean, I guess that makes a whole lot of sense, but I wish I could get on that bite one day.
Hey, if you guys get up here, we can make that happen. Emily, can you excuse me for 1 second? I just gotta put my dog in. What?
That's really awesome. So we are here talking Lakers. And if anybody has questions about that or these ice fishing trips in general, let us know, because we are super interested in that. Mm-hmm. We have been doing some ice camping ourselves, tried it a time or two, and we just actually upgraded to a larger shack because it's a whole lot of fun, and I foresee ourselves doing it more often.
Here we go. Steve. Hi, Steve. Hey, Blaine. Hey, Daniel. Yeah, we were just talking Big Sky. Yeah, those tube jigs he was talking about seem pretty awesome. Our Lake Trout connection is kind of funny. Besides, I guess, the Lake Michigan, we have one of I think maybe the most southern lake trout lake in our state of Wisconsin, and that's Big Green Lake.
Green Lake, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 200 feet deep. The Lakers don't get super huge,
Well, I don't know that.
Well, we do. Like, they can be like, I think big ones are like 15 pounds or something. But yeah, we haven't even tried that.
No, maybe one of these times.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
No, that's all right. No. So you have quite a few friends who are checking in and saying hi to you. So if anybody, has any questions or any funny stories about Steve, feel free to share that.
Yeah.
I'm sure they have a few.
So we're talking Lakers, and I guess I'm just going to ask a few random questions here for my own. We're talking, we do have one lake by us that has some. So I have never gotten out there. And I'm really interested to hear you talking about, banging the bottom and stuff, because one of the things I feel like I always hear about Lakers is that you fish them suspended in winter. So is that just kind of a seasonal change, or just depending lake by lake, or?
So I've ran into a couple lakes where they're really different. There's a couple of lakes that we fish up north, and there's 2 south of here, Namur Lake and Cold Lake. In particular, everybody fishes Cold Lake deep, really, really deep. They say the deeper you go, the better it is. Well, Cold Lake is the only lake that I've experienced like that. And I've had some buddies, really, really close buddies of mine that I've grown up with. We just get talking over text or over a phone call or whatever, and I'll just ask them, like, what kind of success do you have? And they're all like, oh, man, we get like 4 or 5 Lakers a day. And I'm like, okay, someday, yeah, that's good, depending on where you're at and the fishery, I guess. But the most success that we've ever had was in 35 to 45 feet of water. Lakers love cold water. So obviously in the summertime, they're going to be deep. In the wintertime, No, it doesn't matter. The most success like we had last year was in 30 feet of water. When it comes to wintertime fishing, you don't need to fish deep water. There's absolutely no need for it. The Lakers are cruising. They'll cruise all day long, those shelves, those shallow depths for looking for bait, right? Looking for food. I had Kurt Kelly with me last year. I just seen him chime in there. I took him into one of the lakes last year, and I don't know, we probably caught, I'm going to say 70 to 80 Lakers over 2.5 days. So, I mean, they were very active, and then once you figured them out, like what they liked, what they didn't like. But I mean, and again, that was in 30, it was in 36 or 38 feet of water. Everybody thinks, like, a buddy of mine fishes Pierce Lake, I think it is. And he only gets like a couple a day. And I asked him how deep he was fishing. He's like, oh man, we fished like 80, 90 feet. I'm like, dude, you don't need to. Just go shallow. Try 10 feet. In the morning, you're going to catch a ton of Lakers in 10 feet of water. I'll guarantee you that. Later in the day, they're probably going to be a little bit deeper. But most success you'll have normally is between 30 to 45 feet. And we proved that last year. I mean, when me and Kurt went up last year, we probably caught, oh my God, I'd say, I don't know how many Lakers we caught in like 4 or 5 days, but it was absolutely, my arms were sore. I couldn't, like, you're constantly hooking fish. Kurt hooked like 36 Lakers and landed 36 or 37 Lakers in 6 hours. Right? Like, and that's in 30 feet of water. So, I mean, there's no, yeah, see, he just wrote it in then. I was tired watching him run. And I mean, I was there once. I had a fish on in the tent, and he had, he wasn't even fishing. He has 2 jaw jackers set up outside, and he was sat in a chair next to me. And you could hear bing, you could hear his jaw jacker go off, and I'm playing with this fish in the tent. Kurt gets up and runs after the other jaw jacker. So I'm like, what, reel away, playing with this fish. And I hear bing, you could hear the other jaw jacker go off. He said, Steve, I need help. And I was like, buddy, just use one jaw jacker because I can't even fish. I mean, it was steady. Like, it was insane. But I mean, it's just so much fun to find different depths. And in the summertime, yeah, you fish them a lot deeper, right? But in the wintertime, you definitely don't need to go that deep at all. And when it comes to the bottom bouncing side of it, like I said, Lakers are like cats. They love to chase. And you'll find out what they're doing. And Kurt, same thing again last year. We were in, I had the live scope set up, and we watched the Laker swim in from, it was almost like 80 or 100 feet away on the live scope, and it was like a torpedo coming through the water. Like, it was just a straight mad dash at that tube jig, and it was unbelievable to see. I mean, but like I said, it was all in 30 feet of water. And they'll cruise, like, not very often you'll get one come in 10, 15 feet. If you're in 30 feet of water, they're always cruising the bottom, right? But yeah, I don't know, is there anything else I missed there?
No, that was actually awesome. So some days the fish bite a lot and you have to scale down, the number of rods that you have, that's for sure. Where you are at, do you have like a line limit? How many can you use at a time?
Say it again. You're a bit broken up there.
Oh, like, do you have where you're at like a line limit?
Yeah, there is. I believe it's 2 rods per person. I'll be honest with you. The only time I use 2 rods anyways, if I'm the only one in my tent, because when you're fishing up there, it's just too hectic. It gets to the point where you're like, it's not even worth it. I mean, there was a fish last year I had on for an hour and 15 minutes and didn't even see it. So if you got another rod set up, there's just no time to deal with anything else, right? Like, it's 1 rod for me is lots, and I'm happy. Whether I catch a fish an hour or I don't catch anything, I'm more than happy to just sit there. But there is a rod limit, yes.
And then do you prefer, like you're saying, jigging or the jaw jacker? That just to help cover water on a slow day?
No, I don't like using the jaw jackers. Kurt loves them, and some of my friends love them, but I'm not a fan of them. I'd rather have that rod in my hand and being able to move that jig, right? To me, it's almost the same. And I know some people are probably going to crap on me for using this, but I'm not a fan of tip ups. To me, it's boring. I love using my rod to fish, right? Like that, to me, that's the fun of it. When you get a big laker or a big pike on a medium heavy rod or a heavy rod, and you got that thing on and you can't get it in for 35 or 45 minutes or whatever, that's fun.
I'm kind of laughing about what you said because, there is, in the world of fishing, you get to choose. Some people, that's what they do with their winter is they go out and they do tip-ups. Especially, Wisconsin, where we're at. That's a huge culture of fishing around here is, tip-up fishing for pike.
Yeah.
And that is great. And I love that those people are out there doing that because that means that they're not fishing for panfish.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
I guess it's better to do that.
But it is kind of crazy to kind of all coexist together and that there are so many options. So, what works for one person might not be perfect for everybody. And I think that's great.
Yeah.
Well, and it also for us, we can have 3 lines. And so having that option to throw a tip up out and just mix up your day a little bit, it's kind of fun to be able just to have that option. But yeah, there's nothing like having. It's the initial, everybody's after that initial thump, right? It's the first time you feel the fish on the rod is the fighting and stuff. That's all really fun. Letting it go, seeing the fish and stuff. That's all really fun. But it's always that initial hit that we're all.
Yeah, like tug is a drug, they say, right?
Yeah.
But I've witnessed some dandy fish. Like a few years back, we were down at one of the beautiful places here called Winterford Lake. Used to be a trophy lake in Alberta. Alberta made away with all the trophy lakes, but a good buddy of mine, Curtis O'Brien, he was in the next tent over from us, and you're not allowed to use any bait at that one either. And Kurt had this big squid tube on, and it glowed in the dark. So he throws it down, bangs it on the bottom, and he said you could hear him shout out from the next tent, "Steve-O," he's like, "I got a big pike on." I'm like, "Okay." So I go over and stick my head in the tent, and we were using a 10-inch auger. And when it came up through the hole, I was like, that's nice fish, right? Like probably 25, 28 pounds pike. So anyway, get it in, he lets it go again. My buddy gets a couple of nice pictures with it. He lets it go. And I come back into the other tent. And I don't even think I was sat down 5 minutes. And he's like, "I got another bigger one on." And I'm like, holy cow. So I go back over there and he's playing this thing out. And so keep in mind, 10-inch hole. 10-inch hole is a big hole.
Yeah.
When it comes up through the hole, its mouth was the full width of the hole. And I'm like, holy moly, like that thing is massive. So anyway, we get it out, and we had I think they measured it, and it was like 49 3/4 inches long. And I think I could be wrong in saying this, but he's probably listening here now, but I'm pretty sure it bottomed out a 35-pound scale.
Wow.
Yeah. So when he was releasing it, another buddy of mine, Ken Ball, got pictures. He got it on his side, and he's letting it back down through the hole, and the fish is the full width of the 10-inch hole. So I've witnessed some dandy fish being caught up here in these lakes, right? And it's just so exciting to see.
That is exciting to see. It just is. There's comments coming in. Holy moly! Like that's literally exactly how I feel. Just makes me want to be there. So, is it ice yet?
Yeah, no. I'll be honest with you. I'm itching for it. I can't wait.
Yeah.
I don't mean to wish away my hunting season, but yeah, lake or ice fishing season that's my thing.
So as far as ice fishing goes, we've talked about a lot of different things. What in your gear arsenal have I not asked about yet that you love to use?
I got to be honest with you. That live scope that I have, that's a complete game changer. Like and my striker gear, the two of them are like, you can actually stay out in the elements and you can fish away for hours. Like that striker gear is amazing. The climate suit, like what you guys have, is hands down. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a pro staffer with them, but it's hands down the best gear I've ever used. And you can kneel down, your knees don't get wet when you're down on the ice, and it's just warm. It's but then when it comes to the fishing or the fish finder, that live scope is I can talk about that too, but it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing to use because it shows you so much, but it's almost cheating.
How long have you had it?
I only started using the live scope last year.
How's the learning curve going from, other traditional flashers to something like that?
It actually wasn't that bad. I find it very user friendly. I was using the LX7 up to that, and I always was a big camera fisherman. I have the AquaView HD7i Pro, I think it is, and I was always a big camera fisherman because I love seeing the fish come in. And then I started using my LX7 flasher, and then last year I'm like, oh, I'm just going to pull the trigger on a live scope because I had two before. I had one before, but it got stolen. So anyway, I didn't get to use it. But anyway, this one here, yeah, like to set it up and use it. At first it was a little bit intimidating just because you got so many options and whatever else to use, and you're like, holy, how do I set this up? So I just YouTubed it, and the first weekend we went out, yeah, we caught a ton of fish, and to see them on that live scope is just amazing. But the learning curve wasn't actually too bad. It was the settings. Once you get used to the sensitivity and the brightness of your screen and different stuff to use on it, it's actually not that bad. And it literally only took me like 5 or 10 minutes to, maybe a little bit longer, to get it set up and get it dialed in, what I would call. But yeah, it's amazing.
That is a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
Josh is giving me a side glare because everyone always asks us if we have it yet, and honestly, we don't.
When you can watch a fish come from 60, 80, or 100 feet away and hammer your bait and see how they react to different stuff. And I mean, last year we tried a ton of different things like lures and jigs, and you can see how they react to it all. You can find out what's working, what's not working, and I mean, like I said before, they're like cats. They love to chase. If you see one coming in on the screen, just start to reel up nice and slow, and then you'll see him pick up speed, and then he'll make the mad dash right up to underneath the ice after your tube, right, or whatever it is you're using. It's remarkable.
That is actually really cool. And that is, a feature that's really unique to LiveScope. But for people who don't have that yet, the other thing that you mentioned is an underwater camera. And that is actually another fabulous tool. And in a lot of cases, a lot more in people's budget. So tell us a little bit about your AquaView, because that's one of my favorite ice tools also.
I love the AquaView. Like, I've used the AquaView lots. And depending on what your water's like, you know what I mean? Like, it can be good, it can be bad. But I mean, I used the camera last year when we were down in Cold Lake, and it was amazing. Like, I was fishing 60 feet of water using my camera, and I could still see, like, the water clarity is just amazing in Cold Lake. I could see 15 to 20 feet away from my camera, and you could see bait fish coming in, and it was just amazing. And a sandy bottom, rocky bottom, you can see shelves. You know what I mean? Like, the camera allows you to do a lot as well, but like I said, each have their pros and cons, right? The nice thing about the camera is that it's exciting to see because you actually get to see the fish come in and hammer your bait. But it's, I don't know what I would rather, the live scope or the camera. Probably the live scope, maybe. But
Yeah.
the camera definitely has its place for sure, and it's exciting to use I think it is anyways.
Well, and I think they both have a place. I guess I'm not so sure about the like, I'm assuming, being that it's a sonar based technology, that live scope, that shallower water is going to be a little bit of a challenge for it, just because of how the angles work, right? So
you're right.
When you get return angles, you're going to have narrower points of view. So like for us, we do a lot of backwater river fishing in like 2 feet of water. Yeah. And so like even our Vexilars aren't very useful, but our cameras are very useful, you know, and so it's another tool to have in when used properly, you know, they can be very helpful in making you a successful angler.
In any, like you just said, then they both have their places, right? Like, just for instance, last year, live scope is good. But when you get to deep water, live scope is no good because you won't pick anything up on the bottom. You'll pick it up if it's suspended, but if it's coming in along the bottom, your live scope won't pick it up when it gets so deep. but you throw your flasher, because I got I have the transducer as well for to operate the flasher on the live scope, or on the 95 SV, sorry. And that obviously is different, but like I used it last year down at Winterford Lake, and we were fishing in, I believe it was like 10 feet of water, and the fish coming in looked like they were that big on the screen. I was like, holy moly, that's a big fish. And then you hook it, and it's like a 6 or 7 pound walleye, still a beautiful fish.
Yeah.
But it looks like a monster coming in, right? Because you're in such shallow water that everything looks bigger because your graph is not so big, but the fish look monstrous on it. And then when you get in even shallow, it's just no good, right? That's when your camera comes into play, and like you said, different tools for different stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's for sure. One of my favorite ways to use the camera is honestly just around brush to find all the hidden fish around. You know,
Oh, yeah.
you guys are talking about a few other different things, but my other favorite time to have the camera is anytime that there's like kids on the ice or people who aren't, you know, super familiar with the ice. You know, when they can put that camera down and actually like see a fish there. And it is kind of funny, you're right, because it's sometimes hard to tell like the size of the fish. And sometimes they all just look giant down there.
Yeah, and they always look bigger on camera. Like, I mean, we went to another spot here a couple of years ago, and there was an elderly couple on the ice fishing probably a couple 100 feet from us, and they came over just have a conversation and see how we were doing. And they had their grandson, so he sticks his head in through the window in the tent, and I got the camera set up, and we're in like, I don't know, 30 or 35 feet of water. So that's one thing I got to give to the AquaViews. The AquaView is amazing when it comes to depth and for color and clarity and stuff. So this kid sticks his head in through the window, and all of a sudden there's like 4, 5, 6 Lakers on the screen, and his eyes just lit right up. And he couldn't believe it, right? He's like, Ma, or he said, Grandma, he said, looks like an aquarium. It did. I mean, it looked just like an aquarium when we were down there because they were swimming around. But yeah, I mean, as for somebody who hasn't seen it before, and I mean, it made that kid's day, right? It's just so awesome to see.
That is so awesome to see.
Yeah,
and actually, one of my favorite tools that transitions to open water too. We're here talking about ice. I bring it on the boat.
What's it like for open water? I've never ever used it.
Oh, honestly, okay. The thing that you have to think about is battling the wind. Like on a really, really windy day, the camera is not very heavy. And so you have to factor in like the swing of the boat or whatever.
Well, we have the Micro Revolution 5 Pro.
Yeah.
And so we have the little camera
in ice season, but it is
we have
a
the
nice
little camera and the
design.
little cord.
Right.
The bigger HD cameras have the weighted housing, and they're a little bit more stable. They also have the fin attachments to make it a little bit more stable. But yeah, you're moving around a lot, which is a little bit hard to index where you're looking. But if
you're searching brush, you got to be careful, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But I think where it shines is when we're open water fishing. You know, when you're fishing suspended fish and you come over schools of fish. And a lot of times, your graph isn't very good at judging size, right?
Yep.
Especially in 2D mode. And so, unless you're really good at it, well, at least for panfish, you know. But when you can find those schools, you can drop it down quick, and you can figure out the size. So you're not sitting fishing a school of crappie that are only 4 inches long. You know, you can move on to a different school or something. So I think that's where, in my eyes, it really excels.
I actually forgot one thing there when I was talking about tackle and stuff. So I was going over some of my tackle, and I remember we hooked into a couple of big fish, and I always use the Shimano Stratics 1000s. They're beautiful reels. They're smooth. They're like butter, right? And I remember the first time I hooked into a big one, and I was like, oh man, like this fish is just going to rip this thing apart, because it just kept stripping line. And I mean, the reel's just not built for something that big, right? But I had to move to a heavier reel. I think Shimano put out their Vanford, I think it was. It's a beautiful reel. It looks a lot like the Stratics, but I think I actually have one. I think I actually have one right here. I think I could be wrong. Yeah, I do. But yeah, they look a lot like the Stratix. That's a Shimano Vanford, and here's your Stratix CI4 Plus. So they're very similar reels, but one's 1,000, one's a 2,500. Anyway, I learned real fast that the 1,000s are not much good for big Lakers.
Yeah.
And then it almost broke off one of the rods. I got a video there. You can see it in my hand. I think it's a St. Croix medium or whatever it is. But yeah, like bent right over at the handle, almost breaking off. I'm like, time to upgrade some gear, right? But yeah, I just want to touch base on that again because I remember you were asking the tactical side of it.
Yeah, no, that is awesome. I think a lot of people, really appreciate hearing that too, because a lot of times people will go out for, big fish. Oh, I'll use what I've got. It'll be good. It'll be good. So I think a lot of people have had that experience like you have had with your rod bending and habits. Like, whoa.
Yeah, I mean, it even got to the point last year when I hooked that one, I couldn't lift that fish off the bottom, no matter what I did. And the video's right on Facebook for everybody to see. I think it was like an hour and 10 or an hour and 15 minutes I had it on. We never did see it, but you can see me in the video. I can't lift that rod up to haul that fish off the bottom. And that's a heavy rod with big line. And I mean, you should be able to lift them at all or lift them a little bit, but no, when he wanted to go, there was no holding him.
Wow.
So I mean, tackle is super important when you're getting into that stuff. I mean, another interesting fact, I've never ever caught a perch ice fishing. And a lot of my buddies are avid perch fishermen. So I don't do any panfish stuff at all, really. And this year is, I don't know, I'd probably like to get a trip to Cascade, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, that's on our list this year too, hopefully.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
we
we'll
can
meet you
kill
there.
2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah.
Kurt is asking if you could tell the story of the traded up fish.
Oh my, that was crazy. So we met a guy up on the lake last year fishing Lake Athabasca. No secret. And we're the only people on the ice. And we're a long ways from civilization, Washington, well, 65, 70 kilometers, I guess. And we meet this guy on the ice. No idea who he is. He just shows up at our tent when we're fishing. And became good buddies. Great guy. So he goes and packs up his stuff. He comes down and sits up. I said, well, Lyle, I said, why don't you just sit up next to us? Said, you're more than welcome. And he's like, oh, I don't want to impose. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. You take your time, do your thing. I said, we don't care. Like, I love having company anyway. Like, I love having a ton of people around, just how I am. So anyway, he sets up his tent, drills all his holes, gets everything set up, gets in there. So I think that was might have been the second night. So he's playing out this beautiful fish, like 25 to 30 pound laker. And he calls us over, so we go over, and that's the guy I was telling you about. He has the live well set up in his tent. So anyway, we're looking down through this live well because it's 2 by 4 feet, 2 by 4, and you see this big laker swim by with a tube in its mouth, and all of a sudden you see another one swim by with no tube in his mouth, and it's bigger. So the next time that they're coming by, the bigger laker is trying to take the tube out of the smaller, and the smaller laker's 25, 30 pounds. And he's trying to bite the tube out of this laker's mouth. So I'm like, holy moly. So I run back into my tent, throw my tube down to see if I can coax this bigger laker over to my side. So all of a sudden, I hook one, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is it, right? And then I hear, Steve, I traded up. I'm like, what do you mean you traded up? He's like, I got 2 of them on. So the bigger laker comes in, side swipes the smaller one. And so now the tube jig has 2 hooks on. I got a treble, a trailer, right? And it has the big shank. So he hooks the bigger laker while he still has the smaller one on.
Oh my God.
So he's got he's got like 75 pounds of fish on, and it's just peeling line. Like, it's steady. And he's got a heavy rod, one of those, I think is it a hot rod, I think it is, or made somewhere down by you guys anyways. And he's got a good bait caster on, drag is up, and this thing is just screaming line. So we're all there. Me and Kurt and Lyle, we're just there watching it. We're just amazed. And I guess whatever happened, the hook came out of the smaller one. And so then he didn't know what he had on after, but he knew he still had one on. But you could feel the one let go on his line, I guess, or he could. And gets it up to he's still playing it out or whatever. And he lost the smaller one, caught the bigger one. But he had two of them on the same time.
Wow.
Oh
Yeah,
my
so like
gosh.
to see that, I mean, it made the whole trip, right? I mean, that fish was a monster. It was a tank. But to see that, I mean, you often hear guys talking about stuff like that, but you never actually see it for yourself. And to actually see that and how long it went on, and for him, we watched. I'm pretty sure Kurt videoed it. For him to have on two of those fish at one time, and to strip that reel like it did was just, I mean, it was something you remember the rest of your life because, I mean, how often do you see it, right?
That's crazy.
But that's the story.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's honestly
Good
a
call,
really
Kurt.
great story. Yeah, that's a really great
Yeah,
story.
I mean, you don't get to see that very often, and it was kind of cool to see. I got some pictures there on my Facebook, I think, with some of that with that bigger fish that Lyle caught, and I'm pretty sure you have one in the live wells. But yeah, I'll send them to you guys after. It's
Oh, wow.
a nice fish.
Oh my gosh. So it's amazing, how time flies when you have fun. So
It
that
is.
is exactly the case tonight. And we have had a lot of really great stories here tonight. So for people at home who want to continue to, tune into all of the fun that you're having, how do they do that?
Huh. That's it's a lot. You mean to go on the trips that I go on?
No. Well, I mean, like, not like coming with you. I mean, that would be fabulous too. But like, how do people follow you on social media?
Oh, they can get me on Facebook. They can get me on Instagram. I don't really use Twitter at all, but Facebook and Instagram, we post a lot of stuff there, and I'm going to try and post a lot more this year. I felt kind of bad last year when I was talking to Mike there a little bit, Mike and Selmo, and I said to Mike, I said, I feel kind of bad because I feel like I didn't really give you guys a lot of content. And he's like, I thought you done really good. So it's kind of cool to hear that, but I just felt like I could have done a whole lot better than what I did. But yeah, me and a few of the boys, I'm sure we'll be posting a ton of content this year. Myself, Kurt Kelly, Curtis O'Brien, Ken Ball, Dan Davies, and Alicia Gurney. They got big sky flies and jigs there. So I'll be doing some fishing with all these people this winter with probably Kevin Carl and Dutchie Mason and those guys. So if you see them post, yeah, follow them because those guys always post some dandy stuff. Those guys are big walleye fishermen when it comes to Dutchie Mason and Kevin Carl and them. And I'm going to try and hit the walleye a little bit more this year with Kevin Carl and hopefully Dutchie and see what happens. But I'm a big Laker guy, so I don't like taking time away from that. But we got to make it. But yeah, for anybody who wants to follow us, I mean, just look me up on social media on Facebook or Instagram, and I love posting stuff when it comes to fishing. So hope they enjoy it.
Cool.
Awesome. And thank you for being here with us tonight, because it really has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And to the people at home, thank you guys for being here as well, because that is always a really great time hearing your comments and your questions and all of your funny stories, tipping us off on the good ones to ask. So with that, as always, looking forward to next week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.